Om Namo Bhagavate Shiramanaya. We start this evening Dialogue 428, dated the 15th of December, 1937. Sri Bhagavan has selected 10 stanzas from that famous work of Sri Sankara, Sivananda Lahari, describing devotion, Bhakti. One. What is Bhakti? Just as the ankola fruit falling from the tree rejoins it, or a piece of iron is drawn to a magnet, so also thoughts, after rising up, lose themselves in their original source. This is Bhakti. The original source of thought is the feet of the Lord, Ishwara. Love of his feet forms Bhakti. Into what do thoughts subside? By what power do thoughts subside? Invisible, like the magnetic force that affects a piece of iron. The place of their subsidence is the same as their original source. That source, that final resting place or thought, cannot be of the character of thought. Beyond thought, it is differenceless. For differences are conceived only in thought. What is that source? Undifferentiated, limitless, undivided, unconceived. thoughts of difference are based upon what one takes to be his identity. Your identity is not of thought. Where the knowledge of your identity shines forth, there you abide as the source. Where identity is not distinguished from the Lord, all thought subsides and ceases to exist as such. This is Bhakti, devotion. The original source of thoughts is the feet of the Lord, Ishwar. The nature then of the Lord, Ishwar, God, is that of the innermost consciousness or existence of you. God is completely beyond conception. That God graciously manifests in any manner whatsoever is the feet of the Lord. The rest of his inconceivable nature being quite beyond any kind of manifestation whatsoever. Now it is love of his feet that forms bhakti. If love of his feet forms bhakti, then it is love for that original source of all thoughts. Love of the absolutely inconceivable one, then, is Bhakti. Two, the fruit of Bhakti. The thick cloud of Bhakti, formed in the transcendental sky of the Lord's feet, pours down a rain of bliss, Ananda, and fills the lake of the mind to overflowing. Only then the jiva, always transmigrating to no useful end, has his real purpose fulfilled.
So then the feet of the Lord, that is a term that has taken me a very long time to comprehend. So that is, well, I have to say aspect, although there's no aspect of God, but that's the aspect that we can be aware of while in this embodied state. Is that correct?
Love of the feet of the Lord is bliss. It pours down a rain of bliss. From where? From that which is utterly transcendent of all. The one-like space. And because of its bliss, there is naturally love for that. Which makes the bliss shine forth even more. Pouring down a rain of bliss, Ananda, and fills the lake of the mind to overflowing. There is then no room in the mind for anything other.
Nomiguru, does the source know the thought, or is thought absolutely non-existent?
Thought is absolutely non-existent, and the one that knows that is the ever-present consciousness. The lake of the mind overflows with the bliss of the Supreme, which is not different than one's own self. Only then are you happy. Only then are you satisfied. Only then the jiva, the apparently individualized being, which is always transmigrating to no useful end, life and death, life, death, life, death, has his real purpose fulfilled. He loses his jivahood. The bliss is known by bliss itself. Which is not other than the infinite consciousness or the real existence. What is your purpose? Your real purpose is self-realization. Other so-called purposes are just various ways of looking for the happiness that is found in the bliss of such realization. When in reality you are of the nature of eternal being, consciousness, and bliss, there is no use to continue with illusion, no use in staying in bondage. Fulfill your real purpose by such bhakti. Three, where to place bhakti. Devotion to gods who have themselves their origin and end can result in fruits similarly with origin and end. In order to be in bliss everlasting, our devotion must be directed to its source, namely the feet of the ever-blissful Lord. What is eternal is alone worth striving for. What is eternal? If there is a beginning, there is an end. If it appears, it also disappears. What is eternal? What is it that is beginningless and endless? The ideas about God and gods are not eternal. But God beyond all ideas, transcendent of such, is without beginning and without end. To that which is eternal, we should direct our devotion. As in self-realization, a new existence is not added to you, but the nature of your existence as it is, free of the least conception of individuality, stands self-revealed. So it is with the realization of the ever-blissful Lord. Bliss is not created anew. Bliss is already present in its fullness, perfectly so. It is only ignorance that makes one imagine otherwise, becoming confused regarding one's identity and overlooking the immediate bliss, which is of the very same nature as the consciousness that knows it. The Lord is ever blissful. God never has a sad day. You likewise, if you realize what your identity is, never experience suffering, but are ever blissful. A bliss that does not depend on conditions and causes, but is self-existent, self-known. Four. Bhakti is a matter only for experience and not for words. How can logic or other polemics be of real use? Can the Gatapatas, pot and cloth, save you in a crisis? Why then waste yourself thinking of them and on discussion? Stop exercising the vocal organs and giving them pain. Think of the feet of the Lord and drink the nectar. The reference to pot and cloth, these are examples frequently found in logical explanations. Experience is what matters. Argumentation does not lead to it, so it is of no worth. Existence is beyond argument. Logic cannot grasp the consciousness that knows it. and bliss is realized by first-hand experience. Think of the feet of the Lord. Direct your mind to the Absolute. And drink the nectar. That is, find blissful immortality. Five. Immortality is the fruit of devotion. At the sight of him who in his heart has fixed the Lord's feet, death is reminded of his bygone disastrous encounter with Markandeya and flees away. All other gods worship only Shiva, placing their crowned heads at his feet. Such involuntary worship is only natural to Shiva. Goddess liberation, his consort, always remains part of him. One who misidentifies with, becomes attached to phenomenal things, including the body, will give rise to the fear of death, because death takes all those things away. One who knows his nature as a mortal being is free of the fear of death. If in your heart you have fixed the Lord's feet, that is what you regard as your essence, your very identity, is only the Supreme. Then death flees away from you. Just as death could not touch Markandeya because of his devotion, as depicted in the column tiles in the mandaram. Who is Shiva? What is his nature? All other gods worship only Shiva. Who is Shiva? What is his nature? What is that which even other gods are said to worship? It must be beyond thought. And beyond thought lies one's existence. Beyond which nothing can be. What is it that either knowingly or unknowingly all worship? They are drawn to worship despite their thinking. Such involuntary worship is only natural to Shiva. If it would merely be a form of God, this would not be so. But as God is formless and absolute, ever existent and without a second, without anything other, so there is devotion, involuntary worship that is natural. Where Shiva is, there is liberation. Where devotion is, the jiva has become Shiva. As liberation is inseparable from the self, for liberation, know yourself. And it is those who are devoted with all their hearts that such knowledge dawns. Six, if only devotion be there, the conditions of the jiva cannot affect him. However different the bodies, the mind alone is lost in the Lord's feet. Bliss overflows. If only devotion be there, that is all that's needed. one's full devotion. If that is there, the conditions of the jiva cannot affect him. Conditions such as the state and condition and activities of the body. The jiva is a living being. The conditions refer to a being. Not to one's real nature, which has not a trace of jiva in it. The conditions of the body and such will not affect you if devotion is there. The condition of worldly phenomena will not affect you if devotion is there. All confusion and its consequent bondage vanish if only devotion is there. However different the bodies, life after life, the mind alone is lost in the Lord's feet. You turn your mind inward to know God, and God swallows the mind that turned inward. What is left is only God. Bliss overflows. The mind is not an adequate container for the truth or the bliss. Its form is obliterated, leaving bliss standing in its own nature. Seven, devotion always unimpaired. Wherever or however it be, only let the mind lose itself in the Supreme. It is yoga, it is bliss, or the yogi or the bliss incarnate. Let the mind lose itself in the Supreme. Wherever you are, whenever. However be the approach, let the mind lose itself in the Supreme. Whether the approach is Bhakti, as explained here, or the approach is jnana, as is explained in the rest of the book. Let the mind lose itself in the Supreme. Attachment is gone, misidentification is dissolved, and all that's left of you is that. That is yoga, union with God. That is bliss. with the mind wholly absorbed in it. Or that is the yogi, because it's a state of identity. And that is bliss incarnate, seemingly embodied, but actually of a bodiless nature, is bliss. Eight, karma yoga also is bhakti. To worship God with flowers and other external objects is troublesome. Only lay the single flower, the heart, at the feet of Shiva and remain at peace. Not to know this simple thing and to wander about, how foolish, what misery. With or without external flowers, the flower of your heart has to rest at the feet of Shiva. Thereby you remain at peace. When you offer the single flower of your heart, your sense of identity and reality and of all happiness are resolved into one that can never be divided. It is the changeless, and the changeless is the root of peace. Not to know this simple thing and to wander about, how foolish, what misery. We may understand wandering to refer to physically moving about in the world, or wandering in a spiritual sense, trying this thing and that thing, one thing after another. What is needed is the knowledge of one simple thing. To overlook that which is most basic is foolish and is the cause of all misery. To be free of misery, to be free of ignorance, lay the single flower of your heart at the feet of Shiva and remain at peace. 9. This karma yoga puts an end to one samsara, the repetitive cycle of birth and death. Whatever the order of life, ashrama, of the devotee, only once thought of, Shiva relieves the devotee of his load of samsara and takes it on himself. One need not wait for a particular time in life to turn within and realize and to devote oneself. The time to do so is now, always now. Only once thought of, Shiva relieves the devotee of his load of samsara, takes it on himself. It is not that you are restricted to thinking of Shiva only once. That is not what is meant here. What is meant to be lauded is the power of turning the mind inward. Just even thinking of Shiva, the Supreme, the power of that, the power of the intention to turn inward, and the power of that to which you are turning. Such power is immense, truly measureless, and frees one of the entire samsara. It wakes one from this dream to the reality which is bliss. And 10. Devotion is jnana. The mind losing itself in Shiva's feet is devotion. Ignorance lost, knowledge, liberation. Once ignorance is lost, and knowledge stands self-revealed, there is liberation from all of the imagined bondage. And who can say whether this is devotion or knowledge, bhakti or jnana?
So is that similar to saying like jnana is devotion? I mean, in other words, you could interchange.
Devotion is knowledge, knowledge is devotion. The experience is singular.
But all these experiences would be probably the same experiences. I mean, it wouldn't be any different. It would be identical.
The experience is only one.
So the inquiry can be described as devotional, I guess, in a sense.
Inquiry may be regarded as the highest form of devotion in practice. Look at your own experience. While deepening knowledge, don't you find there's an increase in devotion? And when you increase your devotion, isn't there a deepening of knowledge? Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Bhakti